Hello.
Glad to have you here. And we have been on some parallel journeys in the last couple of years, and I'm grateful to bring your story forward. I've found your journey very inspirational in terms of the ways that you've explored what relationships feel authentic and true for you, and really want to help others do that as well. So I will introduce you briefly. Tina is an embodiment and intimacy coach with a big passion for optimizing business processes, which I look forward to digging into how you're blending those things together. Those things are not necessarily commonly put together, but I know that's been a journey to kind of figuring out your various offerings. So I'm glad to have you here. Anything you want to say to kick the conversation off?
Thank you for having me and for the invitation. Likewise, I've also been always very inspired by how you bring people and great minds together and inspire others to do the same. So thank you very much for that. And indeed, I as I was preparing for this call, I really wanted to make sure that we can address both of these sides, because it has been such a journey for me this past year to accept the old self, as I call it, of being the super structured driven businesswoman, and the new self, which is a very fluid, flowy, gentle version of my feminine. And yeah, I'm finally at a point where I really want to embrace those two together, which is a lot of my teachings also for integrating polarities within ourselves.
So during our conversation today, we'll get to know Tina a little bit better. She has a really interesting backstory to kind of what's led her to doing this embodiment and intimacy coach work.
So I'm from Austria originally, but I'm currently based in Bratislava and the region around, so to speak. So I think my home has been Austria, Slovakia, and Czech Republic for quite some time, and I really enjoy this little circle of Europe. I mean, my journey started, like for many of us, in a time of, let's say, 16, 17, 18 years old, reflecting about my career for the first time at that age. And there wasn't so much to decide for me, as I've always felt that there was a path laid out based on the family that I grew up in and the expectations that I perceived, like within my family, but also societal environment, that was the path of success and the path of being an empowered woman, which usually meant going into business, at least in the circle that I am from, studying business or economics and management, which were the things that I've done with great determination. I really loved to challenge myself always, my whole life. I really loved structure. I loved efficiency. And maybe that's a little bit in my, let's say, so to speak, German blood, to have the very rigorous, structured life. And that has led me to great length. I mean, I've learned so many important life concepts, even not just business concepts, through being abroad multiple times and having different business experiences in the operations field most of the time. And also leading up my career to the most previous employment, which I've left before transitioning, let's say, on this new path that was in the food tech startup world, where I joined a quite early stage startup and continued to grow that on various levels and operations, from the deep groundwork of going personally to the customers at that time, up to being in the global operations team, and making processes more efficient, automizing them, writing codes, exploring my love for spreadsheets, and all of that fundamentally has been a great journey. I wouldn't want to do it differently. However, I also realized that I lost myself, as in the inner self of me, let's say, and the growth side of me a little bit, because all of my being was so immersed in evolving and developing for the sake of that company, for the sake of that role. And I reached a point quite like recently, let's say, towards the end of that career path, where I didn't really know who I am actually. And I was like 27 or 28 years old at that time. And I asked myself for the first time the question, who am I actually outside of my work? And I had not even the remotest idea of how to answer that. And that was, I think, the time how my journey started. This was about the time when we met also. And I just started exploring different passion topics, which were very much related to relationships, to psychology, sexuality. These were always the things that interest me the most, and that was the, let's say, the most present thing I could grasp also from my private environment, or what I would say, what could I be, what am I outside of work. And yeah, this was like a process, I would say, of discovering and really also actively looking for digging deeper in my personality and finding my purpose, and ultimately also finding Tantra and immersing myself in the practices and teachings that really allowed me to blossom into a very different version of myself that I didn't know really existed.
Beautiful. Well, yeah, I know that we can relate over this high achieving self kind of dominating our kind of persona and kind of extracting ourselves a little bit from those environments that kind of really bring that side of us out, and finding other environments that allow us to connect and tap into other parts of ourselves that have maybe been ignored or not had space. So I've loved seeing you kind of explore these other parts of yourselves. And what was it about Tantra? Did you explore some other things before you kind of came upon Tantra? Like when you were kind of like, what else is out there that's maybe not my work interests? Yeah. What was that like for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I was more following opportunities at that time, just following my gut feeling, most likely, which has led me on different paths, which some of them were right and some of them were maybe not so much. I did explore also the field of psychedelics, which was very interesting for me and very much related in terms of exploring the depth of yourself. And maybe even on a psychological level, what it could bring to society, to humans. But ultimately, I realized that my biggest passion lies in the field of sexuality. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time. It was just really a very deep knowing. And that knowing, or that decision also to follow that path, has very quickly just brought me Tantra. As in, I've never really thought about that term, or I never read about it. I knew nothing about Tantra, up to the point that I just made a firm decision for myself that I want to follow that path of learning about sexuality, my own, generally, exploring different sides of myself. And I've already been on a very alternative relationship journey, I would say. And I just wanted to dig deeper, and that's how I somehow even manifested, I would say, that input. And then I started studying it. I started a program that was intense for a year, and that brought the biggest self-transformation, I would say, and has ultimately ended 2023. So coming back to like what this year has been about, I think that the whole journey of immersing myself into tantric teachings and following that personal transition journey has like peaked at the end of 2023, which was the trigger point of a lot of transformation in 2024.
And for those, I'm looking forward to jumping into that conversation about the year. But I feel like there's a lot of maybe Tantra, when people hear that, there's so much more to it than I think what people typically understand. I mean, people typically associate it with the sexuality piece, but I've learned a lot from you about the fact that it really is kind of a spiritual framework for this kind of integration journey of dark and light, masculine and feminine. And I just think that there's so much more that you have to teach people about what it actually is beyond the perception.
Yeah, I was quite amazed myself to find what it truly is about, compared to what Western society has picked out as the juicy parts of Tantra. As you said correctly, like, it is a spiritual framework in many ways that's teaching about weaving together opposites. So that's what it literally means, translated from Sanskrit. It's to weave together opposites, which relates to the polarities of life, which relates to the yin and the yang, the masculine and the feminine, the shadows that we have inside of us and the lights that we have inside of us. But also Tantra means bringing together the three levels of our being, which is the mind, the body, and the soul, and all the other layers around it. So it's a very integrative practice that uses the body a lot, because and it was one of the things that resonated the most with me, was that because in our society and the way I grew up, I was so much stimulated by my mind and the work that we do, the education we get, it's always so head-based. Like our energy always goes up. We want to be more stimulated. We want to have more coffee or whatever, and we want to just be more awake in our mind, and all these supplements, and I don't know what it was always about, like optimizing efficiency, working better, like having clear brain fog and whatever. It was always about the mind. And I myself, I followed that as well, because I was striving for this sense of achievement, which was always very mind-based. And I never even bothered to focus on my body, except of in terms of like health and working out. I was always very conscious about that, but it also came from a place of achievement, like wanting to achieve something or following a certain standard. It didn't come from a place of knowing or intuition or really nurturing my body in the ways that it wanted to be nurtured. And that resonated so much with me, that the tantric practices are, and the spiritual framework in that, are very much leading into the body. So it's leading the energy down into the body, feeling and connecting to just a greater knowing than the mind has, because the body will always know a bit more than the mind can rationalize. So it's also very helpful in decision making, and has been very helpful in decision making. So yeah, Tantra, I mean, I could talk a lot about Tantra. Of course, there is the sexuality part, which is like relating to how to find greater and deeper intimacy within yourself and with others, through different, like through practices that are beyond our sexual organs, that are beyond the physical body that we have, that is going deeper to the soul level, that is going on energetic level. And it brought me personally a lot of revelation, a lot of changes in my partnership, and yeah, very different experiences of what I myself and my body could experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing a little bit more about how you understand Tantra and what it's meant to you, and how it supported you in kind of your own integration of like mind, body, spirit. That's beautiful. And Tina and I met through a co-living experience in Portugal. And what I think is interesting about kind of, you mentioned this, that I was on a path to trying to find people who are maybe pursuing alternative ways of living beyond what was available to me in my kind of world that I was exposed to prior to that. And so I found this co-living experience, and that was where Tina was. And it was people who were kind of making their own rules around work, around travel, around relationships. And I was just intrigued by people who were saying, rather than maybe what like I've just been like handed by society in terms of how these are structured, like what if I ask deeper questions to get to know myself better about whether there's another way I might design this that doesn't look like the norm, but that might make sense for me. And I have been really intrigued by kind of your non-traditional approach to relationships. And I know you felt inspired to encourage other people in that journey as well. Is there anything that you want to say about that, your journey of kind of discovering non-traditional ways of relating and connecting? And yeah.
Yes. It's a beautiful question, and I always like to reflect back, as it has been one of the most fundamental parts of how I have evolved, I think, as a person. And I think it's very much rooted in the same desire that I always held, most likely, that brought me also to Tantra. But back then, before that, it was the desire of thinking that there must be more. And I went on a quest to enjoy exploring, like what does that mean? Like there must be more. I always felt that there is more to love, and there is more to intimacy than what I've experienced. It was just a knowing, or was it a curiosity? At this point, I can't say anymore. Like I know what's the longing in me now, but back then I just wanted to bend the rules. I guess I just figured that, like, I never wanted to follow what others were doing just for the sake of following. That was just not my style. I've never liked that. I've never done that. And I also didn't want to bend the rules just for the sake of bending the rules. Like I wasn't this kind of rebel type. I was just deeply convinced that there are so many ways that are right and feel right to different people, and that feel the truth to different people. And just being genuinely a very open-minded person, I would say that's one of my greatest values. I was just like all accepting and unconditionally loving, and spreading that love to everyone around me. And so my partner was a big my partner of 10 years at that time, he was a big influence on that, in like opening up that mindset of trying new things, trying different things, and just embracing the difference, or the unconventional, so to speak. So we had wonderful relationship where we could really be very authentic in communicating about our needs, and we were also aligned in that, which is very important, of course. So we did go into a about 5-year long polyamorous relationship after we've already been together for 4 years, which was like, it's a long story of how it all happened, but ultimately coming or rounding up that story, it was rooted in this desire of, or this knowing of feeling that there is more to love, like, and I always felt this so expansive love that I wanted to just find ways to express it. And that's another thing, like what Tantra is and teaching is about, how to express intimacy and love to people, even though this person might not be your partner. How can you create these intimate bonds, and how to express love to others, like in different forms and in all these different shades that intimacy can be. And like, in coming from a quite conservative environment, for me, it was love and intimacy was always reserved for this small container with your partner, but it just didn't feel like it's enough. Like, there must be more. So maybe that natural step for me at the time was going into a polyamorous relationship. But ultimately, what I know now, or what I feel now, is that I can share this intimacy and love with a lot of people without having to be in a partnership with that person, or without having to be in a sexual relationship with that person. So that's, I think, something that has changed for me through the journey, that I still feel this longing to spread love or to share love, I'd say, and share intimacy with the people around me and loved ones. But it has expanded in the forms it can be, that it doesn't need to be an intimate partner anymore that I can express and share love with. So at this point now in time, as the transition has progressed, I'm strongly feeling the longing to build one deep relationship with one person in a monogamous setup traditionally, while at the same time just being very open to just expressing love and intimacy in different forms with other people.
Well, I appreciate that, kind of sharing the arc of that story. And one of the things that I think you beautifully illustrated is another kind of like maybe misunderstanding or misconception from, I feel like, those who see polyamory from a distance. And there is this ethical non-monogamy language that people are using. And I actually have found that a lot of people who are deciding to open up their relationship are more self-aware, more conscious, more loving, and more generous. And it's not this, what I feel like often the label is, like, those people are just like selfishly pursuing their own desires and recklessly just kind of like throwing themselves out there to anybody who will like engage with them. And I found it to be quite the opposite, actually. And I also think that there's maybe a perception that those who choose that life are like having these encounters from a place of wanting to take. But what I've observed, especially of the women that I know who have made this choice, is that it's like, I actually have a lot of love to give, and it can't be contained in one relationship. And I also am a multidimensional person and want to have these connections with people who appeal to all these multidimensional parts of myself, because you can love so many people in so many different ways. Until you meet someone maybe who does feel like there is a soul connection, that there's a divine journey that you're invited to go on together, which I know we'll talk more about that in the review of the year. But thank you for the ways in which you've taught me, even in my own like breaking down of the perceptions maybe that I had about people who choose that lifestyle, or I don't even know if you call it a lifestyle at this point, but.
And it's interesting how my journey has evolved, from actually this particular personal development and exploring different alternative relationship models has been actually the trigger point of me wanting to go into counseling, or wanting to share this knowledge about relationships and sexuality that I've acquired. And ultimately now, as I've made this transition, also my own relationship, let's say, has changed at that time. So the focus has shifted a little bit, but the value that I feel about ethical non-monogamy or polyamory, however like one would like to identify as such, is still so great for me, because I'm almost inclined to say at the point that it's more, or it might feel more true to many more people as they begin to develop their identity, or as they are growing up, that this might be even more of a default setup that allows us to grow personally and in a relationship so much faster than being in a monogamous relationship, being just in one little container. And yeah, I would still like encourage people to express if that feels true to them, and to just be authentic in how they would like to live and express relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that there's no doubt that your communication skills like are really enhanced when you're in a non-monogamous situation, and I absolutely think that there's a lot of growth to be experienced through kind of that way of relating. Well, I would love then to zoom in a little bit on the year of 2024. As I mentioned, stories has been kind of a theme for me this year, and like shaping our stories, sharing our stories, such a part of human connection, even therapeutic, work. I feel like a lot is like the freedom of sharing our stories and being accepted and loved and embraced for kind of the truth of who we are. And so I would love to start by looking at the beginning of 2024 and let you set the stage a little bit for kind of where you were. You kind of already alluded to this, that you'd like been exploring this Tantra kind of framework, really deepening your studies. And then it was kind of like this time maybe to like be like, okay, I'm ready to like share this, I'm assuming, but you tell us.
Yeah. So for me, January 2024 has been quite a dark month, I would say. It was a place of total unknowing, which I've never experienced before. And not too long before, in actually end of November 2023, I've given up my job, my career that I've been so identified with for a long time. And also in terms of my relationship, there have been some, let's say, catalysts almost that kind of blew up my whole belief system and the values around relationships, maybe even my current setup at that time. And that not enough, I've also changed location. So in January 2024, I was on my sabbatical leave in Bali, beautiful tropical miracle place. But it was quite a difficult, dark time, regardless, because of what I've been going through personally, and the outlook of not knowing how things are like going to evolve, and knowing that when I choose to go back home, things just won't ever be the same again like they were before. And that was really scary, because it was partially like a little safe cloud to be like there so far away in Asia. But also it was just a little time space vacuum, or I knew that I have to step out of it sooner or later. And I was also in a place where I just started to really lean into my emotional fluidity at that time. And I was so desperate to speed up the process. Somehow I just really told myself, so many days I woke up, or I found myself in this very desperate circle, or like with myself, and I was really thinking like, it should be over already, I want to be on the other side. And I knew that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, which is one of my most favorite sayings. I don't know if that also exists in English, but in German it does. And I knew that there will be the light, but I wanted it to come so much faster, and it just didn't come. So at some point, I think I just surrendered in beginning of 2024 to the process, and I just let it happen. And there is no shortcuts. That was the biggest learning that I had to accept. And it took months and months. And of course, there were ups and downs. But my learning in the beginning of the year, or where I've really been at in January, was the point of surrender to what's happening, that I knew things will never be the same. some parts of me have to die. Like I was in this whole rebirth process, so I just kind of had to accept and let go and see, okay, some parts will die, new things will be born, and I'm just gonna, I just trust the process. That's where I was.
Yeah. And was there kind of, you were in this kind of process of being kind of stripped down and stripped back, where did kind of that rebuilding process begin? Like, just in terms of like, okay, I can't go back to my old life, so I guess there's a new life I have to craft for myself moving forward.
Yes. Well, it's a good question when it started. It's all kind of a blur, when you're in this struggle of transition. Months are melting together in all the ups and downs. But I would say it was a bit later than that, about 2 months later, maybe in March, shortly before coming back home. It was also right after I've done another training, tantric bodywork training that was working a lot like with the body and emotional release of the body. That was quite profound, I would say, in that process of letting go the last or very big pieces of my sorrow and my grief, and it really opened me up to moving forward into creating and building this new life. So I would say the building process has started within myself around like end of Q1, and it took at least another quarter up to the summer to actually arrive at a place where I really let go of the old life, because then it's easy to make the decision while you're far away. In March, I've still been in Bali at that time, but then coming back home and being confronted with everything, like your old flat, there's just a life, and all the pressures, the expectations, the family, the friends, and the people you love around you. So of course it has been very influential and maybe even slowing down the process. But again, also then I just had to surrender and accept that there's no way of speeding it up. And actually it was, I think, the healthiest decision I've ever made in my life, to allow myself to take the time that I needed to express my needs, even though that meant creating inconvenience for other people. And I was very surprised how supportive my environment has been in holding space for that process and not rushing. So I consider myself very fortunate to have had that support. But the message I would really like to send is that no matter which transition process you're in, there is a big part of you that just needs to let go of trying to control the situation and the speed of that outcome and where it's going to go. And you just have to surrender and trust the process, because things will align up. It's like that there has been this explosion, this chaos of so many bits and pieces of my life, and I just trusted that one by one I'll pull them back in as I stabilize and ground myself. And grounding was the biggest mission for me in Q2, in like grounding myself so I could start building again from scratch.
Yeah. I will say, and I'm glad you shared, I think when we are in a place of transition, like changing our environment really can help us to kind of not feel constrained by our kind of current structures. And so I love that you took that time to go to Bali. And also there is the reality that we have to like come back to our normal life.
Yeah.
And still try and honor the person that we had the freedom to be maybe in this different environment, and figure out how to integrate them into this, familiar place, and where there are relationships where certain people might be excited for kind of this new person that we're developing into, and other people might be a little either threatened or, like not so sure, and navigating that. With that in mind, who were the people, kind of the antagonist or protagonist is kind of often part of a storyline of like, the people who are kind of like helping you with this journey and kind of to move through this transition. And then maybe the people who were, making you feel constricted or kind of making you feel like you needed to go back to what you knew versus what you were kind of growing into.
I'll start with the last question, the constriction. I think that's easy to answer. That was myself. I think that nobody in my external environment has restricted me in my development, but it was mostly myself in still not knowing or holding on to what I believed before, or the way I wanted to live my life, let's say, before all the thriving for success in the sense that I knew it before. And the thriving for stability in a relationship the way I knew it before. Of course, I was always deviating to the familiar. I want to go back to familiar because that meant safety, and I didn't want to be out there not knowing like where am I going to live and who am I going to be with, and it was uncomfortable to be in that space. So of course that the person restricting me in the process was probably myself the most. And I was reflecting on the mentors of the last year, and I would say that there was one person in particular who I've just been in touch with actually in 2 times in January, but these 2 times were so profound. Her name is Natalie Abrahams, and she is one of the influential voices in embodiment, Tantra, sensuality, eroticism, eros, like so many topics. Like one of the really most authentic people I've ever encountered on the internet, let's say, and influential voices, very inspiring. So I had the chance to meet her even in person as I was in Asia. She lives there, and then had another follow-up call, a mentoring call, particularly about my situation and my transition. And she was the one, I think, who gave me permission for the first time to speak out loud what was happening and to accept my truth in the ways that I felt I wanted to transition into in terms of my relationship. What were the steps I had to do? What were the things I had to let go of? And also she was the one who made it so clear to me that there are these parts of myself and of the relationship that I was in at that time that just have to die. And she was so blunt and honest in these things that was refreshing. And I think I really needed to hear that. And yeah, she also really called me out on decisions or things I wanted, or I was sharing with her from my story that were based in fear or whether they were based in love. And yeah, how love can transition and all that. Like she was speaking out basically a lot of things to the point that I was already feeling at that time. So she was definitely one of the most influential people in the beginning of that journey. And the rest of the time, I think the biggest supporters were the people involved in the setup of transition, which were the person I was in a relationship with before, my partner of 10 years, his new partner, and my new partner, who we were in this, let's say, relationship situation for quite some time. And I couldn't be more grateful to every single one of them for how they have supported the process while supporting themselves, but also supporting me, and not rushing anything, being very understanding, and just being in it together. I never felt like I'm alone in this, and that's the most beautiful part. And yeah, I'm very grateful to have had the privilege to go through this with them particularly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's so beautiful when we have people who know us before and also are wanting us to help become. Sometimes I feel like it's new people who are helping us, like you were saying, this one, Natalie, you said was the woman's name, who is like a new person who's kind of showing us a path forward, and also, skilled in the areas that we're looking to kind of grow our expertise. But sometimes it's people who've known who we were and also know who we want to become and can kind of walk alongside us in that journey. I love that you had both of those.
Yeah, that's really nice.
And I know that letting go of identities has been a big part of what your journey has been this year, and also integrating identities. And so I want to invite you to either say something about letting go of this, like, oh, I'm a person who does non-traditional relationships. And now you're like, actually, I want to be in a relationship with one person. And then the other piece being your journey to saying, oh, like this part of me that is kind of focus on optimization and efficiency. Maybe she doesn't have to totally get left behind. Like maybe actually I can bring her along for the ride. So yeah, anything you want to say about those pieces of yourself?
Yeah. So letting go, as I said, and surrendering to the process was a big learning for me. And so was also letting go of identities. And that was also one of the things that maybe Natalie at that time brought up to the surface, that I can evolve. Just the fact that I've been so vocal about non-traditional relationships or and that this fact might have changed in the way that I view relationships, that my inner truth, my desire has simply changed. It doesn't make my previous ways of living invalid. It doesn't make it a lie. It was still true to me at the time. And it, like, you wouldn't believe how hard that is to accept and let go, because for some reason I thought that there is this linear progress and a process of our life or development, and once you pick a certain identity, and especially I've been so vocal about it, sharing about it, I kind of felt like I had to stick to it, because if I wouldn't, then it would all be suddenly not true anymore. And one of my second great value next to open-mindedness is integrity. So there I had this big clash with my need for integrity, and not wanting to let go of that identity that was related to being polyamorous or identifying as polyamorous, and also not wanting to let go of this identity that was a high achiever businesswoman and efficiency lover, let's say. And suddenly I found myself in the total opposite of both of these things, and career and relationship are the two, like, some of the two greatest pillars of our life, I might say. So suddenly I was in the exact opposite of that. So I had to explore first, I think, the exact opposite of being career-wise in the completely unknown, unproductive nothingness, let's say, for some time, just figuring things out. And on a relationship perspective, also being on the complete other spectrum of, I would just love to close one person and hold on to him forever and not move anymore. And I had to go in this pendulum of, I think, two extremes before I could find the middle ground. And that was also the place where I could really listen to myself and hear what was it that I wanted and what felt the most aligned with me at that time, career-wise and relationship-wise. And yeah, just rounding up, or also what you said, that I had to accept that both of these things can coexist within me. There is part of me that is so valuing and supporting the alternative relationships models, ethical non-monogamy, let's say, that sees so much value in that, and I'm so grateful to have made these experiences. But then there's also this other part who is now really deeply believing that if you, like for me, wanting to go very deep with one person, wanting to build this tantric partnership of intimacy that is simply more than what I knew, it has to be with one person, and there is no way of doing it with more. So these are also kind of two extremes, and I think some people might find the middle ground in that, and everybody has their own truth. But I had to just integrate and accept that there is always two sides that can coexist within myself, and at the same time I can transition into a new career model that is a bit more non-linear, that will have a lot of ups and downs, that wasn't so clear in the beginning, and still realize that and do the body work, for example, which is totally unstructured and fluid. And at the same time, there is this part of me who is so much loving structure and processes and Excel spreadsheets and numbers and plans. I need to have plans. And I was rejecting that side because I was so afraid that I would go back to the other extreme where I didn't feel very healthy, or I didn't feel balanced. So it's all a matter of letting go of the attachment to certain identities, because so many things can coexist within us. We don't have to choose, actually. We just have to allow ourselves to live in opposites sometimes, because there is so many sides of us.
Well, I can relate. I definitely had that integration journey too, of kind of stepping away from parts of myself and then wanting to pull them back in. And especially this year, kind of that kind of like leadership and maybe that part of me that also was high achieving in certain environments. And like, wait a second, I like that part of myself and I want to kind of pull that back into the equation. And so we're always kind of playing with what pieces we're honoring in any one season of our lives. And I think I remember Glennon Doyle being somebody where I was like, I could imagine myself being her, where she wrote a book where she was like, I saved my marriage and you should too. And then like her next book, she was like, I got divorced and got married to, or, you know, like I'm now in a relationship with a woman. And I was like, what? Like, I like have this cringe factor of like imagining myself being somebody who's like, this is my truth right now. And then like in 2 years, I'm like,
yes,
change my mind.
Yes. But it's interesting. Like, why is that? You know, why can't we just evolve. It doesn't mean that it wasn't our ultimate truth at that time, what we
Yeah.
believed with the knowledge that we had, what was available to us. And then, like, as we evolve and grow as humans, we will have access, we will expand. We just either go into higher consciousness, or circumstances change. Like, we're also allowed to make simply different decisions due to external circumstances, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah. I
There's so
think it's
many
the ego, I
factors.
guess.
Yeah.
And where are we landing at the end of the year? Like, what is your what is your current feeling? And also, what from the messages of the year, or the lessons of the year, do you feel excited to carry forward to the people you're wanting to support in 2025?
And I'm very happy to say that I genuinely feel at the end of the transition process. I'm certainly not at the settled and grounded place that I was before, but also I may never be, or I am not meant to be at this point. So I'm really embracing this unknown, which is not as scary anymore as it was in the beginning of the year. So relationship wise, now towards the end of the year, I feel very settled and grounded, actually, in the new relationship, where I was following my intuition and really my body's knowing of who I wanted to be with, where I felt this soul connection, like you mentioned. Like, I haven't felt it before, and being with a partner that is fully devoted to our relationship, and to growing for himself as well, and me growing with myself, so we can build something great together, and yeah, go deeper in our relationship. And it feels wonderful. I'm also in a new place. I'm still living in the same city, but I've built, let's say, a new home for myself, which was a big part of my process, to find the stability and the grounding. So in the private life, I would say I feel very, yeah, very safe right now, emotionally very safe, very balanced with myself in terms of my health, and also, yeah, the relationship with my previous partner and my community. I'm very feel very, very nourished, so that's beautiful. And career wise, it takes a bit longer, I would say. I'm still a bit in this unknown, even though of course I have much more clarity in what I would like to do. And I'm certain that I want to continue that path in sharing all I have learned about intimacy through the journey of being in alternative relationships, but also through the journey now of going actually very deep within myself and resolving a lot of things that were holding me maybe back from being truly vulnerable with my partner, and sharing all the practices I've learned with the partner or with myself to just go deeper and create a connection that's beyond the physical that I've known. And I'm like very, very passionate about the embodiment work and the body work that I do through Tantra. So the clarity in terms of what I would like to share is there. Now I think 2025 will be about manifesting this into something tangible, a real offering, and into stability as well for myself. While at the same time, I want to not miss out on the very process driven person and Tina of like the other side. So this will maybe manifest in supporting different projects from the business perspective and the operations perspective that might not be my own, just on the side, or it might also manifest into bringing in these skill set into building my own business. We will see that, I think, unfolding over the next year. But I know that I don't want to miss out on either side of that, and I'm very determined to make it work. And yeah, just going with the flow a little bit for some
Love it.
time.
Well, I know that you've done a lot of work to work through the discomfort of being in the middle of transition, and like you said, letting go of a lot of control, surrendering to the process, and allowing yourself to be supported in that kind of journey. So I am excited for what 2025 holds. I know you're going to support many people, and women really and men need the work that you're doing. I think that we all crave a sense of deeper connection, and that often does start with ourselves. And I think that the practices you're giving people are really going to make a big difference in intimacy
I hope
journeys.
so.
Thanks for
Yeah,
your
I
work.
hope so. Thank you.
So
Thank
can
you.
we do a little goddess card? How does that sound?
Yes, please.
Okay. So
Great.
this deck is called the Goddess Power Deck. I feel it's kind of the ultimate divine feminine message. And they're kind of archetypes or spiritual figures, I guess, across a variety of cultures. And so we'll see what maybe a message might be as you close out 2024 to kind of confirm what you've already uncovered through your own self-exploration. So I'm going to wave my hand over the deck and let you tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Wow. This is wild. I've had 4 interviews total, and this card has come up in 3 of the 4.
Wow. Okay.
Do you know anything about? Oh, go ahead.
What's the name? I can't read it because it's oriented.
Oh yeah, Demeter. It says the nurturer.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And if
Beautiful.
you'll notice, she has like some grain in her hand.
Yes.
And
the holy circle.
Yeah, very kind of definitely some crown chakra connected to the divine.
Yeah, like the divine Mother Earth holding the fruits of the earth.
Exactly. Yep. She's the mother figure in the Greek archetypes. And the message is giving to others is a wonderful feeling. When you have a healthy sense of yourself, you want to share your love, your inspiration, and your experience. And the exchange feels clean. Your boundaries are fluid yet strong. The Greek goddess of grain, motherhood, and the harvest, Demeter, reminds you that a harvest is meant to be shared. You've now tapped into her nurturing love, which is abundant, and your well-meaning gestures will be received with gratitude and in some way returned to you tenfold. Now is the time to nourish yourself too. Forgiving must be balanced by receiving. Allow yourself to feel how the universe is like a wonderful, nurturing mother that's always there when you need her. Demeter says to trust that you are loved and cared for all day, every day, and for all time, especially now.
Oh, that's a very beautiful card. I love that. And then the Mother Earth energy has been very present with me, I think, for the whole year. It was it was definitely the most present energy I've been working with, as I also explored my own inner longing to be a mother, which was also a very new experience for me. And I think also embracing this mother archetype inside of me as I've been resolving a lot of topics with my own mother was very important theme of the last year that we haven't really touched. But yeah, the mother energy and the Mother Earth energy, specifically in connecting deeper to nature, has been a big theme. And I think also the nurturing side of myself is the most present one that also others have been mirroring to me for the last years already. And I am a big nurturer, and I've also very much started to embrace this side of me even more than before, surrendering into that and finding a lot of power in that as well. That I didn't despise it anymore, because there was a part of me that, being in this high achiever driven very busy lifetime, I continued to nurture, but not from a place of deep love, but more of from a place of being expected to do so, or just maybe autopilot. And I started to despise it somehow. Like I didn't like to do it for everyone all the time, even though I did and I presented it as such. But somehow it just felt like a big obligation. And this last year I've finally like managed to reconnect with that side of me, and I know why it is so big within me. It's one of the biggest things, that this mother archetype, it's the most dominant one actually inside of me, and I've been pushing it down so much, where I got this conflicting feeling about nurturing others and nurturing myself even though I wanted to do that, but there was always a little conflict. And I think I managed to resolve that in resolving a lot of things with my mom as well, and really embracing that energy for me. It's a beautiful card.
Beautiful. Well, yeah, I feel like there's something that's maybe resonating as it relates to um the societal expectation, initially rejecting something, but then when we like more consciously choose it, then it kind of has such a different energy, right? Like,
Mhm.
and it sounds like you've done that in the
Yeah.
we all as women are expected to care for other people. That's just like what society expects us to do. And because there's that expectation, sometimes it can feel like a burden, like you said.
Yeah.
And but then when we realize that's like that is something I have within me and have nurtured and learned how to mother myself, and I like now want to share that from a place of not a sense of obligation, but a sense of
Mhm.
like joyful caring that feels like self-expression.
So the summarized final message I would like to share with the audience is to connect, take the time and connect with your body's wisdom, which most of the time just means to listen, especially in transition periods and especially in making big decisions. I would really encourage everyone to take time to get back into the body and out of the head, because the body knows sometimes so much more than our mind can grasp. And the body knows it much sooner than our mind most of the time as well. And the body is very good in giving these messages, and all we need to do is to listen.